So this is one of my favorite chapters that in the textbook. And I think one reason why I like it so much is because I love the fact that we can take the data, the information that we have available to us, and we're able to actually analyze the menu. The menu is the tool that gets our product, our items to our guests. Okay. And so we can actually not only determine the cost effectiveness of our ingredient of our recipes and how that contributes to our overall profit, but also we can actually look at that menu. So that's what we're kind of getting towards the end of our lesson for tonight. But for chapter 4, we're going to talk about basically how do we assign our menu prices? How do we determine what we're going to sell our items for? Okay. A lot of it has to do with how much it costs us to make the items. That's the internal side. If I'm making my recipe, I can control what ingredients I'm using, and that's internal. External forces are things that we have no control over. Okay, we can't control the external forces. And there's 4 of them. One of them is the competition, or what we also refer to as the market. Okay. The market. And when we say market in general business terms, especially like in hospitality, we're talking about a specific area. Okay. And so we might say the San Antonio market, which means restaurants within the San Antonio area. If I say the New York market, like New York City market, those competitors and that particular market will tell me what I can or cannot charge for something. Okay. What I mean by that is if we think about the New York City market, do you think we could get away with charging New York City prices in San Antonio?
No.
Probably not, right? And that goes along the lines of this price and value relationship. Our customers, who again are external, we have no control over them, but they are going to tell us, is what they are paying worth the value that they are getting or the perceived value of what they're getting? If it's not, they're not going to pay for it. Okay. So you could have the most amazing food in the whole wide world, but if people don't value it, then it doesn't matter what you pay, what you price it at, they're not going to purchase it. Okay. If you price it too high, then they don't associate that same value with it, then it's not gonna sell. Okay. How many of you have ever been to a situation where you've gone out to eat and you've like, wow, I paid all that money for that?
Mhm.
Right? That's that price value relationship. Okay. And then we'll talk about market differentiation on the next slide. So the 4 external factors are the market-driven pricing. So what do our competitors pay or charge? Okay. Sometimes that has an influence. I don't know if y'all remember this, but pre-pandemic, Pizza Hut had what was it? I think it was their deal was $10 for a large pizza, any toppings. Okay. And then you go to their app and you start putting your toppings on. They're like, hold on, wait a minute. 6 is the good amount. Like you can't, it's not unlimited. But $10 for a large pizza. So what does that do to the pricing of Domino's, of Papa John's? They start thinking, oh my gosh, okay, all these people are going over to Pizza Hut because it's a $10 pizza for large, but is that same price value relationship? Now we think about the quality of pizza, and no shade on Little Caesars, because I love me a good hot and ready pepperoni pizza for $6, right? Now they're $7. Used to be $5. So what do you think that did to the pizza market when Little Caesars shows up and says, hey, we're gonna change our way of doing stuff, and we're gonna offer a pizza for $5. And not only do you have to not wait for it, it's super cheap, but you don't even have to wait for it. You can have it, it's gonna be hot, it's gonna be ready, you can take it on as you go. So other pizza retailers had to figure out, okay, how are we going to handle that competition? So sometimes our competition tells us what we can or cannot charge for something, right? demand-driven pricing. Who remembers what demand-driven pricing is about?
We can give it a value because they all want the same.
Yeah, so if there's demand that they want that specific thing, right? So if you absolutely have to have your Whataburger while you watch the Spurs lose at the Frost Bank Center, then you've got to buy it there. You can't leave the Frost Bank Center and come back, during halftime with your Whataburger. You got to pay the higher prices there. And I thought this was really interesting. I thought this was, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Okay, so I also, before the pandemic, the Whataburger, which was then at the AT&T Center, was a regular Whataburger up until 2 o'clock. And so you could go and get your normal Whataburger pricing, and then after 2 o'clock, if there was an event, concert, sporting event, whatever, then it would go to event pricing. They would change their menu over to the higher prices. Same thing happens at airports. If you really want to have your Whataburger before you get on that plane, you got to buy it there, and it's a little bit higher pricing because you have a captive audience. Okay. Price value relationship, we've already talked about, and the markup differentiation. This is basically saying that different menu categories have a different markup range that we basically can use as a guideline to figure out how much are we going to charge for our particular menu items. Okay. So let's do a couple of examples. Let's say our soda costs us 25 cents to make. Okay, and that's being a little bit generous. But let's say it's 25 cents to make it. Well, let's change that. Hold on one second. Let's make it 15 cents. Okay, it's a little bit more realistic. 15 cents for the cup, the soda, the carbonated water, the syrup, all that stuff, right? Now, beverages have a 30 to 90% markup. So if it has a 90% markup, that means it has a 10% beverage cost. You see the difference? 90, the difference of 100 is 10. So the 10% is the cost to make it. So if we use our triangle, okay, and I use my cost of 15 cents, and I divide that by my beverage cost of 0.10, how much should I sell my soda for? What do we think? $1.50. Okay. When's the last time you saw a beverage on a menu for $1.50? 2000, okay. Yeah, probably. Okay. Now what? Soda's like what? $2.50, $3.99, $2.99, right? So that tells you that percentage has really kind of decreased, right? Now, let's use the same idea and let's talk about a high protein value, like a high cost protein like steak. Okay. That steak probably costs that restaurant, let's say $35. Okay, that's the restaurant's cost for that steak. If I divide that by 0.10, use that 10%, that's $350. How many people do you think are going to be buying that steak for $350? Okay. Depends on who your clientele is. Yeah, it depends on your restaurant. But you're not going to be selling $350 steaks at Outback. Okay. And so this percentage is more of just a guideline. Okay. Remember, we have to go back to that price value relationship in order to make sure that whatever we're selling this for, we have the guest and the clientele that finds the value and is going to pay that. Okay. So typically higher cost items like proteins, they typically have, where we have entrees, they typically have a higher food cost percentage, which basically means the percent of the cost, the total what we sell it for, a percentage of that is our sales. Oh, well, sorry, our cost to make it. And so in order to make sure we had that price value relationship balanced, oftentimes entrees have that higher food cost percentage. But then our beverages come in and save the day and bring us a lot of profit, a lot of money. Okay. So that's why it's really good for us to go ahead and try to teach our servers how to sell beverages. Okay. Questions about these four external factors. So now we have four methods in order to price our menus. The first one is the food cost percentage. Okay. The first one is the food cost percentage. We're not going to do a whole lot of this because we've already done a lot of practice. We use the triangle tool for food cost percentage method. So whatever our food cost percentage is, we use that triangle, our cost, percent, and sales. Okay. So if you're following along on the notes, 2A is food cost percentage. 3, we use the triangle tool. Okay. The second one, 2B, we are going to talk about the factor method. The factor method this is an easy way to multiply when your food cost percentage is a nice even number. Okay, let me explain what I mean by that. To find our factor, we have to take 100%, okay, and we divide by the desired food cost percentage. So whatever our desired food cost percentage is, we're going to divide by that, okay? And so if I divide 100 by 33.3, Juan, what do we get? 100 divided by 33.3.
3.003.
Okay, so we're going to call that 3 because it's 3.00, right? Because 33.33 repeating for forever is 1/3 of 100. Okay, so it's 3. So my factor is 3. Meaning, if you've ever heard a chef say, take the food cost and multiply it by 3. Whatever it costs you to make it, just multiply it by 3. That's what you should sell it for. They're using the factor method, and they're using a factor method of 3, and which means that would result in a 33.3% food cost. Okay, so we can do the same thing if we're going for 25% food cost. What is our factor? So what is 100 divided by 25? My factor is 4, right? There's 4 quarters in a dollar. So now if I just multiply this by 4, I'm going to get $10. Now I could do my triangle and I could put 250 on top and I could divide by 0.25, but how much easier just to multiply by 4? So the factor method is really easy when you've got these nice even numbers, okay? 30%. If we look at the chart right over here, 30%, our factor, is 3.33. So if I multiply my $30, it costs me by 3.33. My answer is, Christy? Nope, 3.33 times 3. What's 3 times 3?
3 is 90.
9. So $9.99. Okay, there we go. 40%. We look at my chart, 40% food cost has a 2.5 factor. So I'm going to multiply it 2.5 times. How did I get that factor of 2.5? We take 100, divide it by 40, and that is equal to 2.5. That's how we get that. That's how we get that factor. So number 4, to calculate using the factor method, we need to divide 100 by the desired percentage and then multiply the recipe cost by the factor. So So our example is $2.50. We have a 20% target food cost, okay, on our notes page. So if we did that, what is our factor for 20% food cost? 100 divided by 20 is 5. So on our notes, 5 times $2.50 is $12.50. There we go, right? 250 and 250 is 5. 10, 12.50. 2, 2, and 5. There we go. Okay. That's your answer for your notes page. We're gonna do one last one. So what is 1525 times 2.5? 38.
0.125.
So 113, okay. $38.13. And the last one, 10% food cost. We've already done this at 15 cents. Our factor is 10, right? Because 100 divided by 10 is 10. Multiply this by 10 and we get $1.50. Awesome. Hold on, let me check that chat. Oh, you guys are answering you're all answering in my chat. Look at you guys. Oh my gosh, thank you for participating. All right. Questions about the factor method. Okay, now I'm going to give you 4 methods. You don't have to pick one and stick with it. You want to pick whatever one's going to be best for that item. So let's take a look at one other one called the contribution margin method. Contribution margin. What is the root word of contribution? Contribute. So the contribution margin contributes to our non-food cost and our profit. Okay? Contributes to our non-food cost and our profit. That's how I always remember the contribution margin. So to do that, we want to add up our non-food cost plus our profit. Okay, now remember, this is all projection, what we think we want. Okay. Non-food costs are primarily those fixed costs. So we have kind of an idea of what those are going to be. And then we have an idea of what our profit to be. And then we're going to divide that by the number of guests that we anticipate having. Okay. So in our example here, what is 5,000 plus 3,000?
8,000.
8,000. Oh my gosh, I don't have to use my finger. That's so cool. This actually works. Nice. We have let me see if this one works. I don't think somebody ruined it, but so 8,000 divided by 2,000 guests is equal to $4, right? So the contribution margin says all we have to do is add $4 to every single food cost. Let's get this. Look at this. This is my cost to make it, $2.50. $4 is going to cover my non-food cost and my profit. That's my other stuff, right? So what's $2.50 plus $4?
$6.50.
$6.50. Okay. Cool. $4 plus 3 is 7. Oops. $7. 19.25. And then lastly, $4.15. Okay. Questions about our factor method? Sorry, our contribution margin method.
Were we supposed to put an A, B, and C?
So number 5, to calculate the contribution margin, we want to add the non-food costs and the profit. And we want to divide by the number of guests. So A, B, and C. For that, we have A, we would have the 5,000 plus 3,000. That'll give me my 8,000. So then B would be 8,000 divided by the 2,000 guests. And then the C would be adding the contribution margin to the recipe cost. So you can use the first example if you want. 4 plus 250 is 650. So taking a look at this, these two numbers, okay, look at our factor method and look at our contribution margin method. Look at the final pricing. Which two items, item 1, 2, 3, or 4, have the most drastic difference in the pricing? 3 is one of them, correct? So for 3, we go from $38.13 using our factor method to $19.25. Okay? What's the other one? Number 4,
4.
right? We go from $1.50 to $4.15, probably a beverage. Okay? If we charge $4.15 for an iced tea, how many iced teas do you think we're going to be selling? Probably not a lot, right? If we charge too much, people are going to opt for the free water instead of iced tea. Well, if we base this number, that $4, we're banking on that covering that 8,000. And if people don't buy the tea, that's not going to go back to that cover that non-food cost, right? And so our sales and our pricing are going to be all messed up. So again, it goes back to find out which one of the 4 methods works best, and you can have a mix of all different methods. Okay? Oops. The last one is our Q factor method. Okay? Q factor. Q. Okay, the Q factor method, essentially, it's all of these complementary goods. Oops. That's right, I can't have chat open. Right. Okay. So all of these items added together are the complementary items that we would add to something. Okay. Think about like when you buy a plate. When you buy a plate somewhere, did we do the breakfast plate last week?
Yes.
With the sausage and
Mike's
bacon,
sausage bacon.
right? So with the sausage and bacon, we had the potatoes, the hash browns, the toast, and the eggs came with every single plate. So those would be the Q factors because that's the same item that's going to come with every single thing, right? In this case, we're talking barbecue. So what kind of starches might we serve with a barbecue as a side? Mac and cheese, potatoes, fries, corn. Yes, technically a starch, not a vegetable. Okay, coleslaw maybe, right? Actually, that might be a vegetable. So vegetables, we might have things like beans. What else? Like spinach or greens, right? So as we're doing our Q factor, which side do you think it's best to include in the price of your Q factor? The most expensive. Think it's better for me to put French fries instead of mac and cheese? No, because mac and cheese is gonna cost me way more. So if I chose French fries as my starch, then every time someone orders mac and cheese, I'm losing money. All right. But if I do it the flip way and I charge mac and cheese as my flat price for the starch, then every time I sell French fries, I'm making a little bit more money. Kind of like we did with the brisket, the sausage and the bacon last class period. Okay. So keep that in mind. If you're going to do something where they have a list of things they can choose from, you want to put the most expensive item in your starch and your vegetable. Okay. And then the benefit is that we can just add that Q factor in. And then this is what this plate cost me. This brisket plate cost me $6.75. If I did sausage, if I did turkey, I could have different prices based on what it would cost me. But the sides and all the Q factor stuff is all the same. Okay. So that's the 4th menu pricing from number 2, letter 2D is gonna be Q factor. Okay. Q factor is basically all the complementary items, so that should be number 6 on your notes page. On the back side, number 6 is the Q factor. Any questions about how we price our menu items? Anybody? So again, there's a variety of ways we can price things. Don't just pick one method if you have your own business. Don't just pick one method and say, this is what I'm going to do. Something like that factor method, it's very efficient. The contribution margin method, one of the issues is that we can't always control how many guests were coming in. So if I anticipate 2,000 guests and I only have 1,000 guests, well, now my contribution margin is all messed up. Okay. But in catering, contribution margin is relatively easy because you know you're going to serve 250 people. If you're whatever the guest count is for a catering, you know you're going to serve that many people. So if you know your non-food costs and you know what profit you want to make, put that in, divide by the number of people that are going to be at your booking, and then add that to your food cost. And that's way is a really fast and easy way you can figure out what you're going to sell your items for. Okay. So number 7, I'll give you a moment. And this large blank space on number 7 on your notes page, I'd like you to draw this square, adding high at the top left corner, low at the bottom left corner, and high at the bottom right corner. Okay? So I want you to add those 3 things, but I want you to draw it just like that. So I'll give you a moment to do that. So for the menu analysis, this type of graph or chart is something that you'll see in business when you're taking 2 different characteristics and putting the responses into one of 4 categories. Okay. So the way that we read this chart is if something has a low profitability, okay? Sorry, let me back up for a second. Profitability is also contribution margin, okay? Profitability is also that contribution margin that we've talked about, okay? So if it has a low contribution margin and it has low popularity, which means not a lot of people buy it, where these lines intersect is right here at the dog, okay? If we have high contribution margin, okay? And if we have a high popularity, where these lines intersect is the star. If we have high popularity, but it's low contribution, it's low profitability, these lines intersect at the plow horse. And last but not least, if we have low popularity, which means not a lot of people buy it, but high contribution, a lot of people, it makes us a lot of money, these lines intersect at the puzzle. Okay. So the star, those are our star performers. It makes us a lot of money and a lot of people like it. The puzzle, it makes us a lot of money, but we're confused. That's how I remember it, right? I'm confused. I'm puzzled as to why it's not popular. I'm puzzled as to why people don't like it. Okay. The plow horse, people love it. People order it. It's just doing its job. It gets people in our door. Maybe it's their favorite thing on our menu, gets them in the door, and then they buy a margarita on top of that. Okay. It's doing its job. The dog, okay. I don't know why it's called the dog. Don't hate me. I'm a dog person. Okay. But a dog is something that is just not profitable and not a lot of people like it. Okay. So we'll be able to put our menu items into one of these 4 categories. Okay. But first, we have to determine what is high and what is low popularity and contribution margins. Okay. So let's jump to number 8. We'll stay on number 8, okay? So number 8 is the contribution margin. Excuse me. Our contribution margin is the difference between our selling price and the recipe cost. Okay? So if we look at our contribution margin on this chart, I wish I could blow it up. I'm sorry, but I can't mark on it and have it zoomed in. So let me choose maybe green. That will highlight that column a little bit better than yellow. Okay. So if we look at our contribution margins, that is the difference between the selling price and what it costs us to make. So for this example right here, the first one is $5.14. So I sell it for $7.95, but it cost me $2.81 to make it. So $7.95 minus $2.81 is $5.14. Okay, we're gonna get practice with this in our activity, but I'm introducing the concept right now. Okay. Now, number 9 on our notes page, to find the average contribution margin, we need to first add up all of our contribution margins, right? How do you find the average of any group of numbers?
And
Add them all up and then divide by the number we have. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna add up all of our contribution margins, okay? So I will do it with you guys. $5.14 plus $6.64 plus $18.71 plus $5.39 plus $4.89 plus $2.62 plus $3.31 plus $4.94. So that total is $51.64. That's my total. How many menu items do I have?
8.
8. So I divide that number by 8, and my average contribution margin, the average is $6.46. That is my average contribution margin. Okay. So now let's take a look. Is $5.14 higher or lower than my average of $6.46?
Lower.
It is lower. My contribution margin is lower. I'm going to compare every single item. So is $6.64, is that higher or lower than my average?
Higher.
It is higher. Okay. So now you can start seeing how we build out our chart of 1871 is higher than 646. 539 is lower than 646. So we're going to compare each item's menu contribution margin to the average contribution margin. Okay. So if I were to draw my square so far, okay, my chicken breast has low contribution margin. So if it has low contribution margin, it's either going to be a dog or it's going to be a plow horse. We don't know which one because why?
We don't know.
We don't know popularity yet. Okay. That's just the contribution margin is just one piece of the puzzle. You got to find the other piece, which is popularity. Okay. So let's talk about popularity. Number 10 on your notes page. The menu mix or popularity percentage. Those two terms I use interchangeably. Popularity percentage and menu mix. Okay. I had one of my students who's doing their internship right now at a hotel, and she asked the manager like what the menu mix of the items that they sell in the little market is. And her manager's like, what's menu mix? She's like, it's the quantities that we sell. And so she was able to educate her manager about, I mean, her manager knew like how many different items we sell at different quantities of different items we sell. She just didn't know the terminology of menu mix. So our menu mix, what we do with our menu mix or our popularity percentage is we first have to, first of all, what is the universal formula for percentage? That? So 100%, yep. If we're looking for the percentage, the universal formula for percentage is part over by the whole. Good, okay? So if we're looking for popularity percentage, we have to identify which item is the part and which item is the whole. Okay? To do that, we need to add up all of the items that were sold, and guess what? This is our whole. This 4,845 items sold is our whole. What is the part?
Whatever you, whichever entree you're looking.
Yeah, whatever entree we're looking for. So in this case, I'm gonna change to a pencil because it will be easier to see. So 4,845, I'm gonna divide each number by 4,845. Every single one of these. Because this is all my part. I'm gonna divide by the whole for each one of those. Questions on what we just did? Let me show you. So for chicken breast, for example, 867 is my part. I divide that by my whole of 4,845. And I get 0.179. So I'm going to move that decimal place over and get 17.9%. That is how I get that number. Let me show you one more time. Let's talk about our seafood platter. 253 is what I sold. I divide it by my part. Let me do a different division. 4,845, that is my whole. That stays constant. And I end up with 0.052. Move that decimal place over, and that's how I get my 5.2%. Do we all see how that works? Okay. Obviously, looking at this, our most popular is our cheeseburger. We sold 1,376 of them. But again, in business, we like to see things as percentages because we like to see everything per 100. That's what percent means, per 100. And so that means there's 28.4 per 100 items that we sold were cheeseburgers. It gives us that highest percentage. It's a lot easier for us to see that than it is to see numbers. Okay. So now let's talk about how we determine what is high and low for popularity percentage. Okay. The first thing we're going to do, number 11, we need to divide the number of items. Oh, sorry, we need to change that. We want to divide 100. So your letter A and number 11 should say divide 100. That should be a blank by the number of items on the menu. Okay, I need to change that. Divide 100. Don't print your books yet. Divide 100 by the number of items on the menu. Okay, that's the first step. When we divide 100 by 8, because we have 8 items on this menu, I get 12.5. That is my average percentage. That's my average percentage. If everybody sold the exact same number, they would all get 12.5% of the total. That is my average, okay? So just like we did contribution margin, add them all up, divide by the number, we get our average. In this case, we're taking 100 divided by the 8 is our average of 12.5. But it doesn't stop there. I don't know why. We do what's called a popularity benchmark. Okay, we do a popularity benchmark, and what that benchmark says is, in order to be considered popular, you have to achieve a certain percentage of the average. So in this case, let's go with 80%. Now, for me, in my assignments, I will always give you that factor. Okay, I will always give you that factor. In your own business, you have to decide what that factor is. Okay, when we multiply this by 0.80, we get 10%. This is my benchmark. This is what I'm going to compare all of my percentages to in order to figure out if it's high or low. Okay. Again, this is, yes, thank you, Gabrielle and Soraya, helping out Suzanne on the chat. This is essentially, this factor right here is what's going to help you determine what your benchmark is for your popularity. Okay. So chicken breast, 17.9. Is that higher or lower than 10? It's higher. Good. Okay. So that is where we're going to find out all of these highs and lows, is by comparing to this benchmark of 10. So 5.2 is lower than 10. 14.9 is higher. 7.1, 8.4 are lower, etc., etc. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about how we found the high and low for percentage?
Did
Yeah, go
we
ahead.
answer part B to number 11?
Yes, so the letter B is then multiply.
Okay.
That's this section right here, then multiplied by the factor that is provided.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So now let's take a look at this menu. Now that we know highs and lows, oops. I don't want to do that. Nice. Now, as you are going through this particular assignment, okay, I would recommend that you go by category, not line by line. What are the two easiest categories to identify?
The
Just
high and the low low.
Yes, the high and the low lows, right? Just by looking at this information right here, the high and the low low, those are the two easiest to identify at first. So start with one. Let's go with high. So high is my star, and that is my steak. Okay, so my steak is my star. Are any other highs? Nope, I don't see any more.
No.
The next one is low. So I see 3 low lows. So I've got turkey,
Pork chop,
pork chop,
meatloaf.
and meatloaf. Okay. Now, pick one. Contribution margin is low. Popularity is high. Low and high. That's my plow horse. So that's my chicken dinner. And now I have low, high in my head right now. So let me look down my categories. Here's another low, high, and low, high. So that's my hamburger, cheeseburger, and what's left is my seafood. Okay, seafood platter is my puzzle. So now I've categorized all of these items into one of the 4 categories. Okay. Now, just because we have a dog, does that mean we get rid of it and kick it to the curb? No, not at all. There's reasons why we might have dogs. Okay. What would be a reason that we would have one of, like, looking at this menu, why do you think some of these are dogs and not stars?
The hamburger and cheeseburger.
So the hamburger and cheeseburger are the plow horses. They're in the top left-hand corner. So we can talk about those in just 1 second about why they're not stars. But let's focus on the dogs, the bottom left quadrant, this turkey sandwich, the pork chop, and the meatloaf. Why do you think those might be dogs?
Because they're low and they have low profitability and the low, whatever the other cost.
Yes, so they are not very popular and they don't give us a lot of money. Okay, so maybe our recipes need to change. And we maybe can lower the cost of our recipes. What were you saying, Juan?
Oh no, I just said that maybe because they were like not fan favorites.
Yeah, maybe they're not fan favorites. How many of you like somebody else's meatloaf and that's not your own meatloaf? All right. So maybe like, I have the best meatloaf in the world, but maybe other people don't like your meatloaf. And that's okay. Okay. Pork chops. What time of year do you think people might eat pork chops instead of steak? During the Lent season, when people aren't eating red meat. So maybe I just gotta take my pork chop off my menu until it comes time for that season. So maybe it's more of a seasonal item and it's not on my menu all the time. Okay, so thinking about and using our menu to the best of its abilities is what things we want to take into consideration. And this tool helps us with that. Okay. Now, our chicken, going back to hold on 1 second. What Brian was saying, our chicken sandwich, our hamburger, and our cheeseburgers are plow horses, which means people love them, they buy them, but they're not super profitable. So how could we get them to potentially move over to that star category?
Supply and demand.
Well, not necessarily supply and demand, because supply and demand, they're already buying it. It's already super popular.
How about well, with the hamburgers and cheeseburgers, you can also turn them into the steak burgers on the choice of meat.
Okay, so if we change the choice of meat, what's that going to do to our recipe?
Oh,
Change the cost of our recipe,
Cost.
right? If I change from a ground beef to like a chuck steak or like a steak burger, that's going to increase my price, right? But I may be able to charge a higher price, which then could increase my contribution margin. The way that we get them from plow horse over to star is to change that contribution margin. We got to figure out a way to change that contribution margin. And usually that either means we're going to raise the price on our menu, or we have to lower the cost, keep our price the same, and lower our cost and change the recipe. Okay? But what happens if we raise our price
Then it would.
and that price value relationship changes and it's no longer popular? Or we change the recipe and people are like, you know what? This is not the same hamburger I used to enjoy. And they stop buying it, it's gonna lose popularity. Oh my gosh, Mr. Uminski, just give me the answer. I can't give you the answer. Okay? It's all about trial and error. Okay?
It just makes me think of like McDonald's with the McRib. And who else does that? Whataburger when they change out the
Their
different
their
shapes.
limited time offers, their LTOs. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, is there mushroom Swiss burger on the menu all the whole time now?
No.
They took it back off? Yeah, because actually I was talking to somebody from Whataburger and it was too expensive.
Oh, really?
Because mushrooms, like those little baby portobello
Portobellos.
mushrooms are not cheap, right? So anyways, but yeah, so you can try them out as specials and see if they'll work. If they don't work, then okay, no worries. We can just scratch the idea. But this is kind of how we have to decide is the menu our problem or is the problem operational? So is the menu the issue that maybe our prices our items aren't priced appropriately? And we might need to change that. Or maybe do we have just different things on our menu that we just got to get rid of? Okay. if we have, let's say we're a steakhouse, we have a pasta primavera, which is like just basically pasta and vegetables. If that's on our dog category, are we gonna get rid of it? Why would you not get rid of a pasta with only vegetables at a steakhouse?
Vegan option.
Vegetarian option.
Might be
It's a
vegan
vegetarian or
option.
vegan option. So that way, I mean, it may be your only item on the menu that is like that.
Or,
And
or kids that don't want a steak.
or kids that don't want a
and
steak.
just want noodles.
Exactly. So we have kid items on our dog category. Again, just because it's a dog doesn't mean we got to get rid of it. It just means we have to understand maybe we need to order less of it. Maybe I don't need to order and prepare as much of it. Kind of will give us an idea to help manage our costs, okay? Or is the problem operational? Is our menu, is our recipe the issue? Does it cost us too much money? Okay? So those are different things we want to take into consideration. Questions, comments, concerns about this menu analysis? So at the end of this video, I'm going to stop after this explanation. If you look in Canvas, we have 3 assignments that go along with chapter 4. One of them is the popularity benchmark average contribution margin. That's one quiz. That's due next week. Okay. The following week is analyzing your menu mix. So that's going to be the homework for analyzing menu mix is basically going to be the assignment that we're going to get ready to do after our break. Okay. The last one is the chapter 4 exam where it brings everything together. Okay. So these build on top of each other. You need to do the popularity benchmark and average contribution margin first. Okay. Now you guys are lucky because we teach it all in one time. I changed the due dates and made my students in my daytime classes do this assignment before we had class on Wednesday and Thursday. But you guys have until next week to work on that because I know I'm just now introducing the concept to you. So I don't want to overload you. But after you do the popularity benchmark, once you get that grasp, then you're going to go and move on to that analyzing menu mix homework. And then once you get a good grade on that and you get a grasp on that, then you can go and take the chapter 4 exam. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a separate video for this assignment, this activity, which goes along the lines with analyzing the menu mix homework. So that way you can just go back and watch just that if you need a refresher. Okay. So let's take about a 5-minute break. Get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom if you need to. And we'll come right back and we'll talk about this activity. Actually, no, I take that back. Hold on. Just kidding. Just kidding. Let's look at our popularity benchmark quiz first. Okay. So this popularity benchmark and average contribution margin quiz, this is just to give you a lot of practice doing the same thing over and over and over again, just with different numbers. Okay. So it is 16 questions. The last 4 questions are all contribution margins. Okay. You first have to subtract your contribution margins. Sorry, subtract your recipe cost from the recipe menu selling price. Okay. That's your first step. So let's do this first one together. So we take 1995 and we subtract 574. That gives me $14.21. Okay. Hold on, this one I can zoom in. There we go. Makes it a little bit easier for you to see. What did I say that one was? 1421? Okay. 2285 minus 621. 1664. 3599 minus 999. It's $26 even. And then 1685 minus 851 is $8.34. Now I'm gonna add up all of these. Plus 26, plus 1664, plus 1421. And I get a total of $65.19. Okay? My answer though is
Divide by 4.
divide by 4, because I have 4 items on our menu. That's my average. So I'm looking at $16.30. That is my answer. I'm gonna type in right here, 1630. Okay? 1630 is my answer. Let me write it as well.
So does it matter if it's 16.3 or 16.30?
Well, so Canvas will only let you put in the 16.3.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
it'll,
I think the previous quizzes I'm putting the 0.322 instead of rounding up. Now, when you want us to round up, you want us to round up to the nearest thousand or nearest hundred?
the nearest hundred. Well, if it's money, we're gonna round up to the nearest hundred, to the nearest penny.
Okay,
If it's a percentage, we want to round up to the nearest 10, 1 decimal place.
roger that.
Okay. So Canvas is not gonna recognize the 0. So don't stress out. It's still 1630. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns about how we got the average contribution margin?
No.
So you're gonna do that 3 more times. So again, it may seem like busy work, but you're just gonna be getting that practice of doing it over and over and over again. Okay?
So you're subtracting the 2?
We are subtracting the recipe cost from the menu price. Yep. And that will give you your contribution margin. And then you'll divide that in order to get the average. Okay? So 13, 14, 15, 16, all contribution margins. Let's go up to question number 1. Question number 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are grouped into groups of 4. So 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12. Okay? Basically, we have 4 different categories. We have the appetizers, the salads, the entrees, and the desserts. Okay? Follow me so far?
Mhm.
Okay. Each one of these are going to be finding that popularity benchmark, but we're using different percentages. So you'll notice on questions 1 through 4 that these numbers stay the same and this percentage stays the same. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's because question 1 is asking about appetizers. Question 2 is asking about salads. Question 3 is entrees. And question 4 is desserts. Now, when we switch to the next section of 4, question number 5, we have different numbers. Okay. And we have a different percentage. And then questions 9, different numbers, different percentage. Okay. So again, it may seem like busy work, but this is just getting you to do that practice of this process over and over and over again. And so let's do questions 1 through 4 together. Okay. All right. So let's talk about appetizers. So for appetizers, remember, this is where we're going to take 100% and divide by the number that we have provided. So 100 divided by 5 is 20. That's my average. And now my percentage of 75%, I want to multiply by 0.75. And I'm going to get 15. Okay. Double check my math. I think that's 15. 20 times 0.75 is 15, okay?
Yes.
Cool. So now let's scroll down and let's talk about the salads. I'll use green for salads. Green for leaf lettuce. So, same thing, 100 divided by 6 is,
16.6 repeating.
okay, so 16.7. That's my percentage, that's my average. And then I gotta come in and I gotta multiply by 0.75 because that's the factor that has been given. And my answer is 12.5. Okay. So this one was 15. This one is 12.5. Remember, this is what I'm going to use to compare all of my percentages to this number of 12.5. Okay. Let's look at number 3. Okay. So number 3, let's go with pink. Our entrees. We have 15 entrees, so 100% divided by 15 entrees is 6.7%. And then I'm going to multiply by that 0.75.
5.
5,
Yes.
perfect. So my answer is 5. And then lastly, let's go over desserts. I can line these up. There we go. Right? So for dessert, let's do dark blue. We have 4 desserts. So 100 divided by 4 is 25% as my average. And then I'm going to multiply by my 0.75.
18.8.
18.75?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go 18.8. Type it in here, 18.8. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about how we did this? Again, this is just giving you that practice over and over and over again. 100 divided by the number times the percent that's given. Yes, Samantha.
We don't know if it's gonna be wrong.
Let's try 7. What do we say? 0.75?
Yes.
Let's try 8.75. I think I've put in a margin of error for your answers. So it should give it at that point, it should give you the answer correct. If you were off by like 2 or like one or 2 whole numbers, it might count it wrong.
That happened to me today.
Okay, cool. So we've answered 5 questions, 1 through 4, and question 13. Okay, I'm gonna grade this and see. Let's keep our fingers crossed because if we don't have a 5, then we're gonna have issues. I have to read you the whole video. Oh, yes, I know I have unanswered questions. Look at that, 5 out of 16. I would not steer you wrong, okay? So the end of this video is gonna be me explaining those questions for this quiz. So if the end of chapter 4 video, you can go back and if you have questions about this benchmark and contribution margin quiz, go back and watch the end of this video, okay? I'm gonna start a new video after our break to go over the activity. So now let's go ahead and let's take about a 5-minute break, 5 to 7-minute break. We'll come back at 8:05, okay? Those of you who are online, please make sure that you have downloaded the activity that's in the module 4.